Hello, everyone, and welcome to another expert discussion. I am so excited about this particular one. All of them are really special, but each one seems to be getting more and more special as we do them. Today, I'm graced with the presence, somebody that I've learned from, and somebody that I've admired from afar, and I get the opportunity to actually speak with him today, Stephen Rowe of the Leadership Institute. Stephen, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Well, thanks for being here. And as everybody knows, February is Black History Month. So I wanted to dive deep into your expertise and maybe some of the work that you've done over time and things that you've heard through growing up, and kind of pick your brain of where we were and where we are and where we might want to go. But first, I want you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your work at the Leadership Institute.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people I haven't met before, my name is Stephen Rowe, and I'm the Director of Digital Training at Leadership Institute. And Leadership Institute is an organization, a conservative organization that's dedicated to making more effective activists across this country through training. Much like a Army recruit goes through training to become that trained sniper or a Navy SEAL or an Army Ranger, that's what we're doing for politics. And we advance political technology in the public policy process and making sure that conservatives are equipped and as effective as possible with that political technology. I primarily focus on digital, so I'm really good with the internet and I'm really good with computers, and I love to administer that knowledge as much as I can, both online, on demand, and in person. And it's been a really cool journey so far. But just to back up a little bit, I'm originally from the great state of Montana. Not a lot of people from Montana, which is why I love to bring it up. I always jokingly say in my classes that we have a 3-to-1 ratio in Montana, and that's 3 cows for every human. And because there's only 1 million total in the entire state, so there were 7 black guys before I left, and now there's 6. But I really loved growing up in Montana. It was definitely a beautiful experience for me. Got started with the Montana Republican Party at a young age, basically during the Tea Party movement, and saw a lot of success. I helped elect Congressman Steve Daines to Senator Steve Daines, Ryan Zinke to Congress, and I worked as a personal social media coordinator for our now governor, Greg Gianforte. At the time, he was just a private citizen, but you see that success happening, you see what's possible with conservative policies, and the energy was absolutely there. And eventually, I kind of got to a point where I was doing a lot of amazing things online, and I was doing really well for myself. Ultimately, I ended up working at a small nonprofit at the time, and it was something that I wasn't sure I fully that was the right decision for me, but I was super excited about it. Essentially, what happened was I had sat down with the CEO and Greg at dinner, and he invited me over. He said, "You have to meet this guy." And then I met him. He said, "I'm starting this nonprofit. It's going to be one of the biggest things in the entire country." And I really bought into what he was trying to cast as his vision. And so I packed everything up in my car from Montana, shipped out to basically Chicago. It was Lamont, Illinois. And the address was 217.5 Lamont Street, Illinois. So I pull up on Google Maps, and it looks like an extra garage inside of a home. And I'm like, am I sure I'm making the right career move here? But no, I totally believed in the mission, really excited about that opportunity. That small organization today is now Turning Point USA. That CEO that I was at dinner with was Charlie Kirk. And so for about a year, I worked directly for Charlie, worked directly for Turning Point USA. I was one of their first employees hired and really built up the beginnings of their influencer program. But we were using a website at the time called Hypeline, and it was news that was worth the hype. And I was an editor-in-chief. I had 6 full-time staff members, contributors across the country, more than 200 of them. And my team and I were able to achieve about 12.8 million page views in just 1 calendar year from October to October. But again, I realized that I was one person, and of course I had contributors and I had staff members, but I wanted to replicate my success across the conservative movement. And I wasn't looking for a job, but it kind of stumbled upon me. That Leadership Institute kind of like just knocked on my door in a lot of ways. Someone passed me this opportunity. Like I said, I wasn't applying for jobs, but I found this one, it made sense, and I got the job. And now I've been at Leadership Institute training conservatives, trying to increase our effectiveness, especially when it comes to digital technology, but of course, grassroots, of course, campaigning. And I have a deep heart for the grassroots activists out there. But that's a little bit more about me, all the way from Montana, a small town, to where I am now in Arlington, Virginia, working for a large nonprofit that, we do a lot of things, but it's a path that is certainly one that others can take. And hopefully for people that want to get involved, I certainly encourage you to kind of just begin by getting involved in your first election. You know, that congressman, that school board member, that person that's running for local office. Imagine just hopping onto that campaign for a little bit, and it could take you a very long way. So that's just a little bit more about me.
Well, and I think that's just proof, right? And a lot of people have, and this isn't really the topic today, but I want to jump off of your amazing story. And people, I think, sometimes get scared. They're like, I don't know if I should get involved. You know, well, I don't have any money to donate, or I don't have a lot of time to volunteer. But try just a little bit. You have skills that you can contribute. If you're a good writer, you can write copy. If you're good at technology, you can do some tech work. If you're good at graphics, you can do graphics. If you're good at videos, you can do videos. You know, there's a whole, if you're good at strategy, maybe that's your day job. Whole myriad of things that you can contribute to a campaign in small ways that can make a huge impact. And
there's a place for everybody.
Yeah, and I love your story. I mean, that is just so inspiring. It really is. So thank you for that, and of course, thank you for being here. Let's dig into the topic a little bit. Black History Month. You know, things have changed over the last 4, 5, 6 years around this topic. In general, people have gotten really divisive, and the parties have seemed to deviate in different ways. And I personally, as somebody that loves this country, I tell people that I call myself a patriotic romantic. You know, I really love this country. I love the people. I love what it's capable of. I love where it came from, and it hurts my heart to see the fighting. And so, what have you seen from growing up, from your parents, your grandparents? What are some of those lessons and those stories that you've heard your life that maybe we can take some positive nuggets from?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really cool to point towards. And I like a lot of what you said, and I love that patrioticness. And loving America is one of the most important things that we can do. And it's scary that is becoming less and less of a trait in people more generally. But more towards kind of the Black conservatismness in my family, I really think it boils down to something I heard from the former president of Heritage Foundation. Her name is Kay Coles James, a fantastic Black conservative. She's truly amazing. And she had this quote that makes perfect sense and fit into my life. And the quote was, "A conservative is someone who has the audacity to believe and follow what their grandma told them." And in a lot of ways, I think that's absolutely the case, just believing your grandmother. And I remember, being raised by my grandparents and my parents, and thankfully I was fortunate enough to have a pretty strong nuclear family. But my grandparents would take me to church. They would absolutely, show me how to be a man. If I had to, walk with them and go shopping, I was the one that had to carry the grocery bags, right? Those simple things that make a large difference in just building and raising a strong, virtuous character and an individual. I think in a lot of ways, that's what the conservative movement represents. And a lot of conservatives are people that just have the audacity to believe their grandmother. And so in a lot of ways, when I think about my family experience growing up, that's certainly the case, respecting your elders and ultimately trying to preserve this amazing country that they were able to give to us. I think it's always emblematic to remember that other quote from Ronald Reagan, that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. But applying that to a family too, if you are raising children, if you have grandchildren, then you have to realize that, that transfer of freedom starts with you. That transfer of our conservative nature and conservative values starts with that family structure. So I was fortunate to have a really good one. And, some of the things that really stuck out for me were those small lessons, like carrying those grocery bags, like holding the door open, like praying before we sat and ate a meal, and then just enjoying quality time together and seeing what a happy family could be. And once you really see what a happy family is, you want to replicate that. You want other people to have, really strong families. And really people, what you find, if they're more connected with their family in a positive way, statistically, there's less signs of depression. There's a lot of positives, and you just have that support structure around you. So I think there's a lot to be gained from strong families, and I certainly had one, and I hope that we can create more of that in our country.
Yeah, so I'm gonna play off a little bit of what you said. There was a lot of great stuff in there. Wow. So, okay, first thing I'm gonna tackle here is that generational transfer of love for the country. That's such a great concept. I mean, I got chills. I mean, such a great concept. And so you have people that are going to watch this, be members of the club, and people on YouTube are going to be in different stages of that generational transference. You're going to have people that are young, like ourselves. You're going to have people maybe that are even younger. And then you're going to have the older generation watching this as well. And then everybody kind of in between.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important to note, to understand where you are and to be able to transfer that love for the country, sharing the book, sharing the videos, sharing the quotes. And the fact that you are aware enough to see that in your past, see it where you are, and hopefully, I'm assuming, seeing where you can pass it on through Leadership Institute and your other efforts, that is in and of itself so valuable to see. Because I don't think, being, love for the country and being in this area of thought, sometimes we kind of, we're in a bubble. We're like, this is my country, right? There's a lot of me, my, which
yeah, absolutely
is. But to be aware, a little outside that bubble can be really powerful. And I really appreciate you highlighting how that can be transferred.
And how it's necessary. Yeah, absolutely.
And necessary. That is such a special I mean, somebody right now, I hope is literally drafting a graphic for this right now, because that would be such a cool graphic, right? I mean, we see it through presidents and senators and congressmen. We kind of see that transitional change, but through the family. And I think, and the second point that I want to make here is this is connected. And I think that transference happens, or maybe happened, more when there were traditional activities happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Communication with the family, sitting down and praying before the meal. Those activities enabled that transference to happen. So that leads to my next question.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that you would suggest people can do in very small ways to help that transference along?
Yeah, I am, of course, the director of digital training, and I love the internet, but sometimes it means we need to pull away from our cell phones. We need to pull away from our laptops and be more present with each other. I think it starts really right there. And depending on the study you want to cite, about 60% of communication is nonverbal. And so people really see how you're interacting with them and listening to them. And so whether you're talking to your friends, your family members, your loved ones, people around you, what type of signals are you sending to them? And in a lot of ways, I think it's really important that you live by leading with your own virtue. So if you say that this is the way to do it, then you actually exemplify that in your life. I think, and oftentimes in contrast with, a lot of leftists and progressives, it tends to be, you go do that, and, rules for thee and not for me in a lot of ways. And I think my advice to a lot of people is to live your virtue. It's one of the best things that you can do. You're going to be that example, that role model, that champion of hopefully conservative values in your community. And people will see it on your face. Like I said, that nonverbal communication. They'll know when you're really listening. They'll know when you're really praying. They'll know when you really care. And so really lead with your own virtue and really dive into it. So that's one of my biggest pieces of advice. I think the other thing, of course, is just to talk to people. And, it's amazing how powerful conversations are. As we analyze it in the political space, we know, statistically speaking, if I'm going to make you a phone call, if I'm going to text you, I'm going to door knock, and I'm going to just try to reach you online, the most effective way to talk to you and persuade you and convince you is in person. And so I really challenge you to talk to people. And I know it's awkward. You're at a grocery store and, you're not sure if you should start that conversation, or maybe you're just quickly at a bus stop together, or just randomly by happenstance in some waiting room. I challenge you to have a conversation, and it doesn't always have to be led through the political lens, but that will fall through your virtue in a lot of ways. And so when people are seeing what you're doing, maybe you made a friend from that random conversation, and they're looking at your life, asking why you're so happy. The answer probably is because, you're probably living a very faithful, a very amazing life, and then they can hopefully replicate or want to achieve the same. But I think it all starts with, living your own virtue. And I think that's something that conservatives do exceptionally well. And there's still room for improvement here, and not everybody does. And then there's a lot of bad apples, but by and large, people live through their virtue, and that's the examples that we need. And we need more great examples. And if we think about people that are great examples in our community, they tend to be those really big heroes that have lived through their own virtue. A couple that stick out in my head right now are like Clarence Thomas, a Supreme Court justice. we don't have to bring up the how bad Joe Biden attacked him while he was trying to get nominated in that nomination process. But anyways, to kind of focus here, Clarence Thomas is a very virtuous man, very, very holy individual, loves God, and you can see it. And that is a great example for a lot of Black conservatives out there. Thomas Sowell, another great man who advocates for a lot, but primarily freedom and conservative principles. And again, he lives his own virtue. These are humble, amazing men that lead as great role models. And even just to use one more example, which was Kay Coles James, that quote that I brought up a little earlier. I mean, another very virtuous, she is a grandmother herself. And, you see that kind of that shepherding that happens because you have these role models in front of you. So we need more of those. And we just need more examples of what success looks like. And contrary to what you see on social media in a lot of times, I think success is what you do in terms of leaving a legacy. And when it comes to legacy, most of the time that really boils down to family, at least for me. And so if you're able to leave a legacy and really invest into your family, because you're going to be planting seeds that'll grow into trees, 50, 100, who knows, 150 years later. So live your virtue, plant some seeds, and focus on your family.
Oh, I love all of that. I really do. And I encourage anybody that's watching this to please go back and listen to that again. It's so good. I want to pull something out of that. Something you kind of glossed over, but I don't, it wasn't intentional on your part. It was just that it was just in passing, because you and I do this all the time. And that you said, when you talk to somebody, maybe at the store, it doesn't have to be through the political lens. I think that's important to reiterate. Amongst that virtuous living, that prayerful living, that thoughtful living, that trying to do the right thing in the right moment living, it doesn't have to be political. And I'm going to give everybody here permission that you don't have to politicize it either. You can just talk to somebody and be that person that maybe they need to hear from. Maybe they need that warm hand on their shoulder. Maybe they need somebody to sit or stand with them and listen to them. And you can be super powerful in that moment, in a very subtle, quiet way that can change the course of somebody's life forever. So I'm really glad you said that. That was really great. So here we are, kind of full circle in a way, family and tradition and transference of love for country and virtue. What are some of the similarities and differences that you see between what you grew up around and what you've learned from your upbringing and where we are now?
Yeah, sure. I had a couple experiences that were pretty defining in my life growing up, and it really is emblematic of kind of where we are now. And I want to start by first of all saying that there's never been a better time to be alive for anybody in America right now. You've never had more access to technology, resources, and people around you that can help you. I mean, it's an amazing time to be alive. And so I want to add that quick caveat. But flashback to growing up, there were some examples of some tough times. I remember coming home from school in sixth grade and looking at my house, and unfortunately there was graffiti, there was a swastika, go home, there was the N-word, a lot of expletives. And if you pull it up on the internet, if you search my name a little bit hard, you'll find it from the Billings Gazette. But yeah, I mean, that's really tough seeing growing up, and kind of shapes you pretty quickly. But, one of those things that's a learning moment from, an experience like that, an experience of racism, is that you control in a lot of ways how you react to things. And I forget who exactly said this quote, but something to the effect of life is 1% what happens to you and 99% how you react to it. And in a lot of ways, I think that is a really positive thing for people to realize when things are happening. So maybe I did experience that growing up, and maybe that could change my entire course. I could just shut down and said, all right, you know what, right, you're right. Maybe, I want to start putting up those walls and start sectioning myself off and things like that. But that's not the path that I chose. I chose to react in a positive way and to control what I'm able to control. And moving forward from there, you dive into why people get angry, why people are taking actions like that, what's going on. And in a lot of ways, you find that the people that are the most angry, the people that are doing things like that, tend to be the most sad. They tend to be people that aren't the most content with their own lives. And it was good really just diving into that to understand. But flashing forward a little bit to today, I don't see events like that happen as much. And if it does, this would be a national news story across the country. And increasingly, the media has a really good magnifying glass to point out where there is the smallest injustice. And of course, this world is not a perfect one. There's going to be situations where people mess up, mistakes are made, and also, aggression is taken against others. But by and large, now more than ever, it's never been more peaceful time to be alive. And people, and especially Black people in America, have never had more opportunity than right now. And so even if there are those flash systems of where you see something on the news pop up, you got to realize that is the outlier. That is not emblematic of our entire country. And the media increasingly will focus on just that small microscopic bad, that 1%, instead of the 99% of good things that are happening. I remember seeing this meme very recently where at first you saw there was two babies that were kind of walking towards each other. And if you watch the clip for about 5 seconds, you're like, I don't know, is racism ingrained? Like, what's happening? And there was a huge debate about it. And then about a week later, the rest of that video came out, and these two children, one Black, one white, actually hugged each other and then held each other's hands and started playing with each other. But the media didn't cover that second part. They covered the first part, where it looked really bad for a few seconds. I also, it reminds me of like that Nick Sandmann case on CNN with that, when he used that iconic photo of them staring at each other in the Lincoln Memorial. And in that one picture, he looks like the most evil person in the world. And then then see the full picture and you realize that other person was the aggressor walking up to him, and he was standing there not trying to do anything. But like I said, those situations happen all the time in our media where you see this small microscopic thing and it's just not representative of the greater populace. So I bring up my previous past to say that I do think that, there is still some small parts of racism in America, but that's the 1 or less than 1%. 99% of people are good people and really care about moving this country in a positive direction. So, from growing up to now, I would really say that nothing has gotten worse. It's only gotten better. Unfortunately, though, I think the only thing that has gotten worse is the media and their credibility. And unfortunately, they try and make things really bad. And so really, I encourage you to kind of break past that bubble. And I think that's already starting to happen, especially when you think about, how people are getting news. Right now, I know this is, hopefully this stays a little timely. I mean, everyone saw these headlines where, Joe Rogan was in the news for, using the N-word repeatedly over the course of the show. Of course, all of those things were a little out of context. In most circumstances, he was literally reading a quote or reading like a lyric back to somebody. But if you just slice them all together, all of a sudden he's just saying the N-word like 6 times, like what's going on right now? And so, again, you'll see the media consistently do this, but in this circumstance, Joe Rogan is not a racist person. And again, that will now be the emblematic thing that's happening. But just to finish my thought here, just really quickly, is that thankfully, Joe Rogan has an audience of about 11 million people that watch every single episode. And CNN has on their prime time, about 800,000. And so I do think people are waking up and starting to move past these these mainstream news sites, like CNN, like NBC, MSNBC, and really push past to finding the truth themselves. I think that's one of the beauties of the internet in a lot of ways, is that we can start to sift through kind of that media narrative that's trying to be forced upon you. And that's a really big positive, but we just have to be aware that this is the case, right? That Joe Rogan example, the babies that really were together, the Nick Sandmann, again, time and time again, you'll see the media take a snapshot and say, hey, here this is racism in America, and it's emblematic of everybody. But then you just zoom out a little bit and you realize that was a microscope looking at a less than 1% situation. And that's really important to realize. So we've never been in a better place than now, and people need to realize that, and we're going to be in a really good shape.
I love it. It's good. It's a refresher. And I don't mean like a refresher as in what we already know. It's just refreshing, right? To take, I think there's a theme here you can, not responsibility. What's the word I'm looking for? It seems like there's a theme through everything that you're saying, that you have the permission. And the permission here is to zoom out and see things in context in this particular part. The permission before was to, through transitional leadership, essentially, spread that conservatism. So there's
absolutely
a here that you're giving people, and I really love that. That feels so good. And also the permission not to take everything as we see it.
Yes.
Look for the facts.
Absolutely.
Source. Yeah.
Trust but verify.
Right. Well, and I've started now saying don't trust but verify.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. So I mean, it's that type of environment. So you mentioned in there, moving forward in the country, and you said we're in a good place to kind of move forward. Well, how do you see the future outlining? Because we have midterms coming up, we have another presidential run in 24, so things are happening, and
Absolutely,
they're coming our way. So how do you see things hopefully progressing one way or the other, based on what you're hearing? Because I know I believe you're just outside DC.
yeah, we're just outside DC right now.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I travel this entire country. I've already been to, I think, 7 states this year, and it's the second week of February here. So
there you go.
We are traveling and moving. And I'll tell you what, I mean, it's been encouraging to look at the numbers and what's happening across this country. Flashing back just for a second to 2020, which is not that long ago, but that was the last presidential election cycle. Donald Trump, when he ran, unfortunately, I would say the biggest thing, the takeaway here is that he rose in the African American vote, despite what you saw with the mainstream media again, and him being like the most racist, evil candidate in history. If you turned on CNN, he actually rose. In 2016, he had 6%, and in 2020, he had 10%. So we almost the vote. Now, of course, that needs to go up in a very significant direction, but the trends are moving in the right direction. And I think flashing forward to today, this year, 2022, it's shaping up as, I think, a breakthrough year for the GOP on the diversity front, especially Black candidates. From Georgia, where high-profile Black Republicans are seeking nominations for both the governorship and also for the Senate, to in Michigan right now, we have a Detroit police chief, James Craig, who's challenging Gretchen Whitmer right now. We're seeing a lot of positive things. And so 2022, we'll have more conservative Black candidates than ever before. I think that's a huge promise. From 2020, you saw the numbers continue to tick in that direction. And as we look towards 2024, depending on the candidate, I think you're going to see that trend just continue. And predominantly, mostly any candidate that's going to continue, because I think the GOP, the Republican Party, is clearly becoming the right solution for a lot of Black Americans and Latino Americans, quite frankly. But when you think about these minority populations, a lot of times what happens, it boils down to their faith and traditional values. They tend to be, if you ask a Black American, Democrat or Republican, statistically speaking, they're more in favor of pro-life policies. They're more in favor of traditional schools and school choice and things of that nature. And so I think it comes down to messaging and messaging in the right way. Now, I'm not certain there is such thing as like the answer, or if there is, I assure you, I don't have it. But for the most part, I think one thing that is happening more and more is people are starting to see individuals less like a monolith, like, again, the Latino vote, the Black vote, the white vote, etc. And it's starting to get a little more granular than that. And as it does, I think that favors the GOP when people say, hey, I'm pro-life because I believe in God and I'm a Christian. I want my child to be able to go to the best school possible. So I'm in favor of school choice. Which party best represents me? And maybe even just add on to the fact that I don't want my kid to wear a mask from 7:30 in the morning when they get on that bus to 4:30 in the afternoon when they get home to my house. What party best represents me? And so you're going to see that the GOP, the right side of the aisle, is definitely, the pendulum is swinging in that direction in a significant way. Now, we can't mess this up because this pendulum keeps going back and forth. It doesn't have to if we can follow through on our promises. And as long as we tell people what we're for, in a lot of ways, it's being pro-life, it's being pro-school choice, it's being pro-family, it's being pro-gun, it's being pro-constitution. If we keep conveying those types of policies, we're going to be in a really, really good shape. But then we actually have to follow through on those actions. So while 2022 is trending in the right direction, more Black conservative candidates than ever before, when we get elected, it's really important that we follow through on those promises that we made. I think everyone has seen a politician that said that I'm going to go do X, and then goes to and then doesn't do X but does Y, Z, and then A, which he said he was opposing to, or she said she was opposing to. And so it's really important as we do pick up this momentum, which I really believe, I feel the energy. It's a lot like the Tea Party movement, and you see a lot of people waking up, especially Black and Latino voters, that we follow through on our promises. If we do that, 2024 becomes easier, 2026 becomes easier, 2028 just naturally makes sense, and we can continue to grow this big tent of diversity in our party. But it's only trending upwards. I could see it continuing to do that. And if we follow through on what we pledge, then we'll be in really good shape for the long foreseeable future.
Again, let me say this again. If you're watching this, please go back and watch that part again. There's a lot in there to unpack. And maybe we'll do a long form with Stephen in the future. But in this essence, he is distilling the same sub message. He's giving people permission. So take permission and take responsibility for doing what you're going to say you're going to do. And I'm speaking to the candidates that are listening. We have a couple candidates here in town that are currently running, and there will be candidates running in the state and local elections in 22 and 24. And if you're watching this, Stephen's giving you permission to do what you say you're going to do, because that's why people elected you. Don't feel the pressure. I mean, you're going to feel it, but don't allow
lots of pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's this theme.
But don't buckle.
Yeah, don't buckle. Stay true to that. So I always like to leave people with kind of something to go home with in a manner of speaking. And so as we wrap up here, for Black History Month, who are some of the people that you really revere? Who are some of the people that you look up to, either currently living or not, that you've read their works, you've listened to their talks? Who are some people that maybe nobody knows about or isn't on, in the media and in our headspace? Who are some of the people you really think people should look into?
Yeah, I've already said one, and he really is a big icon in my life and my career, and it really woke me up in a lot of ways when I was starting to explore my philosophy, especially growing up. And it's Thomas Sowell. I think his book Knowledge and Decisions really encapsulates a lot of what's happening in this country and a prognosis for what's possible in the future that would be positive. Some people that I haven't mentioned yet that I really look up to and admire, of course, Dr. Ben Carson, an incredible figure, an incredible warrior for life and for the conservative movement. Byron Daniels from Florida, new representative there that just got elected, is eloquent in his words and very, very smart, very conservative, and knows what he's doing. It's very encouraging. Tim Scott, great senator. Love Tim Scott. And he had a great, rebuttal to the State of the Union address where he told a story of how he went from cotton to Congress. And if you haven't looked that up yet, I strongly just YouTube Cotton to Congress, Tim Scott. It's a very awakening story, and it's a very powerful one that he tells and really shows the beauty of the Republican Party. Winsome Sears sticks out in my head right now. I'm in Virginia. She's the first Black lieutenant governor that was elected in Virginia. And she is a concealed carry, gun-toting Republican, and it's very positive to see. And then maybe just one more that really sticks out in my head right now, because he just got his new show on Fox News. I have to shout him out. I love him. He used to work here at Leadership Institute for Campus Reform as our editor-in-chief, Lawrence Jones. And he has a new show on Fox News that is really exceptional and really just showing, again, what's possible for people and paving a path. So, for that, maybe that Black activist that wants to go more that media direction, great person to look up to and to see how he did it, because he's had some amazing radio shows as stint here at Leadership Institute, and now he's big time. He's Fox News, so it's great to see. Those are a few people that stick out in my head. I think I already brought up Kay Coles James and Clarence Thomas, but that's a pretty big list of people, and certainly encourage you to explore their history. But if anything, if you want one, look up Cotton to Congress by Senator Tim Scott. You're going to really love that one, and I think it's really eye-opening for many people.
Thank you. That's great. That's really great. Folks listening, please go look, again, rewind, take some notes if you're not already. Stephen, thank you so much for being here. Any closing remarks for the folks, closing final message?
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to say is a quote, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? And so we absolutely know that leftists, politicians, administrators, faculty members, the media, etc., are not sharing a conservative message in Black communities or any community, quite frankly. And if they're not sharing a conservative message, then it's literally up to us. People watching this right now, we need to take action. And if we don't share our message, nobody will. And one of the things that we teach at the Leadership Institute, our founder, Morton Blackwell, says very well, is he or she who frames the issue first wins. And so when it comes to framing the issue of what Republicans believe and how Republicans can help Black conservatives succeed in this country, or Black people in general, really important that we start framing those issues and don't let the left do it for you. We have to have those conversations. We have to be in those communities. And I challenge you to have more conversations. If you do that, then you'll do exactly everything that we're doing here. Have more conversations, live your virtue, and we're going to be in a really good spot for success in the future.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. I really do. Folks, you have permission. Stephen just gave it to you. You have permission to live your virtue and to go out and serve the community. Stephen, thank you. We wish you the best of luck. And until next time, safe travels.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.